Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Now that training camp is behind us and week 0 is upon us for some in college football, we have a chance to sit back and really project ahead at what the 2025 season is going to look like for the Penn State Nittany Lions. They'll kick off on August 30th against Nevada at home. Penn State is currently favored by 44.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. Get in on the action. We encourage that. So, Justin, there's been so much talk, and we talked about our last episode. It's been nonstop speculation and talk and potential. And what could this be? Who could that be? Well, they did this last year. What is this year going to be? Now that is over, thank God. And you're into a situation where classes have begun. The prep for Nevada is underway. What is this point in the calendar like from your previous experience as a player and a member of this staff at one point in time?
I wouldn't say anxious, but exciting. You know what I mean? Because we're here at the Hayes in the Barn and ready to get going. And it's just now transitioning out of camp into week 1 preparation. Things tend to slow down and get a little bit more strategic. Start getting your legs back underneath you, get some level of routine from how the weeks are going to go, and get ready to get in the game mode.
Considering the talk about potentially winning a national championship has ramped up the last few months, not to say that it hasn't been present for a few years now with Penn State football, but especially the pressure on this season. It's all ramped up. And again, you had Big Ten media days in July, and then you had training camp, and all the polls start coming out, and all the experts and analysts and people like us and the talking heads just pop up, and all of a sudden I got to put up my top 25, my top 5, and here's my bracket that I think is going to play out for the college football playoff, et cetera, et cetera. The talk just goes to an all-time high. How do you control that within the building?
Nevada coming in next week is how you control it. I mean, better make sure they're coming out of camp that things are cleaned up, guys are healthy, and understand that there's a team that's been paid to come kick your butt. You know what I mean? Like, that's regardless of the talent discrepancy or the level that you're expecting to play at. We don't know who's on that other team from a transfer portal standpoint and things of that nature. Guys come with a chip on their shoulders, and football is a physical game where you can display that. So if you come out half stepping like a boxer, someone can get a nice one to the chin. So you better make sure you come out ready to play. So I think that's how you keep the expectations focused on the next play in that 1-0 mentality, which we have to stay intact throughout this whole season.
We're really excited about kickoff week. Next week, we're going to have our full game preview of Penn State versus Nevada. Middle of next week, early next week, we're going to have David Pollack joining us here on the podcast, formerly of ESPN's College Game Day, now a part of the Believe Network with the See Ball, Get Ball podcast. He thinks a lot of Penn State football going into this season, so we're going to have a chance to talk to the former Georgia Bulldog, former NFL pro, and see what he thinks about Penn State going into this season. So we're very excited to have David Pollack right here on State of State next week. Looking at this team especially, I think there's a lot of national pressure on Drew Aller. Like, I understand it, Justin. We've talked about it until we've been blue in the face in terms of the shortcomings from last season that he had, but also the tremendous amount of success that he had. Right now, according to our friends at FanDuel, he is plus 1,800 odds to win the Heisman. He is behind the likes of Arch Manning, Kate Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, Jeremiah Smith, Lenore Sellers, Carson Beck. So I really don't expect this to be a Heisman season for Drew Aller. And again, I hope I'm pleasantly incorrect. And by the end of the season, he's hoisting that. But you never know. And honestly, it's not really a focus of me or the team, I think, and especially for Drew Aller. Everybody's just focused on going 1-0. But again, I think there is a misconception going into this season that Andy Kotelnicki comes up with some really creative play calling, and you got 3 transfer wide receivers in there. Drew Aller is probably going to go off for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns or something like that. I don't see that in the cards statistically this year for Drew Aller. I expect another solid season, positive growth, incremental growth that he's shown since high school. How do you feel about Aller at this point in time?
let's hope that's the case as they move forward and he protects the football like he always has done in his career, and have a little bit of that gunslinger and make the plays exciting, especially if they have some opportunities to blow the top off and the run game's opening up with the veteran running backs and the offensive line. Like this is the most support he's had since he's been a quarterback, and second time with Coach K, and not to play outside of himself, but accentuate the good things and make sure that we bring up some of the things that we were working on last year, whether it's, I'm not going to say more splash plays, but, kind of moving throughout the pocket and moving around a little bit from that standpoint, I think will be big for him. Just, again, playing within himself within expectations, right? Where it's just like not losing the track of trying to toe the line of saying, be a little bit more risky, but not being careless, right? Because that's what I think you continue to talk about. All the national championship teams that have had quarterbacks essentially lead them, they were chucking it uptown, right? And like taking shots when they needed to take shots and completing them, but not forcing that. Not like, not going out of your way.
Chuck it deep.
Yeah. Don't just chuck it deep. That's not what I'm saying. But like have a little bit of gonads to press that line a little bit is what I'm looking forward to seeing.
I think the nice thing about Drew is that last year, I think he showed he has those gonads to do that, but he's smart. He's safe with the football. He was extremely conservative with the football in 2023, a little less so last year, not in a reckless way, but a few more interceptions because he was taking more chances, and he has the arm strength, the intelligence, and the ability overall to do those things. Again, I said this ad nauseum through the entire offseason. This team is going to run the hell out of the football. I have such a high expectation that this is potentially the best offensive line in the country and potentially the best running back room in the country, that you're going to see more of an old school Penn State football team, that they are going to run the damn football. They're going to make good decisions in the passing game. They're going to play solid defense, and they're going to win games. And they're going to win the games they're supposed to. There's going to be those 3 games on the schedule that I think you can look at, 2 for most people, but I will give credit to Indiana as a team that did go to the college football playoff last year. But you're at Ohio State, and you're hosting Oregon, and you're hosting Indiana. Those are 3 games where you kind of feel 50-50 about those. Maybe a little less about Indiana, but we'll discover more about the Hoosiers once the season gets underway. And I think you understand this as someone who's played for this team and has been a part of the staff at one point, that proverbial 2-game season, that concept of, okay, Penn State beats who they're supposed to beat, but they don't beat the big teams. And James Franklin's never won the big one. The counter argument being like, okay, Dabo Swinney didn't win the big one until he won the big one. Kirby Smart didn't win the big one until he won the big one. Jimbo Fisher didn't win the big one until he won the big one. I get there's been a lot of time for James Franklin at Penn State, but it just feels like this is set up for Penn State to get one of those 2 games, those 2 big ones, Ohio State and Oregon this year. Which one? I don't know. You just have to see how this season plays out. But how do you feel about that narrative surrounding the team?
I guess it's fair, just based on the past couple of years and we've been on the big stage, how people have tuned into Penn State. And sometimes, people run with fake narratives before looking at the positives of the overall context of it. But no, you got to win those big games when they come to town, whether it's Ohio State versus Oregon. You want to beat them both so you can, I guess dispute the whole thing. But at the same time, Ohio State had that against them when they lost to Michigan last year. Like, okay, what's going on Ryan Day? And then they turned around and won a national championship. So is it about winning all the big games or winning the right big games? So I think that just comes down to what it is, and not shrinking in big moments, I think, is the thing you want to see from the overall program.
State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today.
Looking ahead real quick, Week 0 is upon us. Kansas State versus Iowa State is in Dublin, Ireland. Farmageddon. According to our friends at FanDuel, Kansas State favored by -3. You'll see UNLV versus Idaho State. UNLV favored 25.5. Kansas versus Fresno State. Kansas favored by 13.5. Western Kentucky versus Sam Houston State. Western Kentucky favored by 10.5. And then Stanford, which is somehow in the ACC now, Justin, like this conference realignment really just drives me nuts. They're visiting Hawaii. Hawaii favored by -2.5. So curious to see how that goes. And then also San Diego State versus Stony Brook. San Diego State favored by 16.5. So that all according to FanDuel, looking ahead to week 0. You and I talked about it a little bit earlier on this week. The game prep occurs so much earlier in the season. Like, okay, now they're completely locked into Nevada. But as a member of the recruiting coordinator staff and then as the coaching staff as a whole, what is that presentation and education process like when it was like, hey, a lot of this legwork has been done and now we're really getting into the nitty-gritty with the players before the Nevada game?
Well, I mean, there's a little operational, right? Like things like guys as their first time ever playing at Beaver Stadium, what to expect before competition, things of that nature, making sure that your headsets are all checked out while the guys are going for their first days of class. And then it's really, again, getting into that rhythm, whether it's the new construction at the stadium, if there's any pregame changes that we've been doing for the past 10 years that are going to have to change up this year. So I think it's getting ready for that standpoint, but now you're preparing for another opponent. So like whether it's looking at their offensive sets and not practicing against Coach K, throwing whatever he's throwing at you throughout the season. Now you're playing for like, okay, this is what they do on first and second down. This is what they do in third down from just a schematic standpoint. So your focus, it just gets a little sharper and more intentional.
Again, really good opportunity the first 3 weeks of the season for Penn State to continue some of these position battles that we've known about since winter workouts, basically through spring ball into training camp. Nevada, FIU, and Villanova. You're going to have your chances to get your reserves in there and see what they are made of. And then a bye week. And then you host Oregon, which as of now, Penn State is favored by 6.5 against the Ducks, according to FanDuel. That'll be the first whiteout game that's against legitimately Penn State's best home opponent since 2019. It'll be a night game on top of that. Hallelujah. Thank you, NBC. So we're looking forward to Penn State versus Oregon, but there's still so much we're going to learn about this team. We're really not going to know what the hell we've got in this team until mid-October, realistically. And even then, first week in November at Ohio State will tell you a hell of a lot about this team. I want to wind down here on a question that's kind of more broad, Justin. Recently, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said there have been discussions within the Big Ten about potentially doing a playoff that would feature 24 to 28 teams. What the hell? I'm like, I'm okay with 12, and I'm glad they fixed the seeding. I'm against 16. But it's going to get to a point where it's just like March Madness, where it's like, anybody can be in. And realistically, this year, there's 10 teams that it feels like could win the national championship. And if you're going to really go through with a fine tooth comb, maybe 8. So it's like, what the hell are you thinking?
Everyone gets a trophy. He's trying to bring amateurs.
Oh, I hate that.
I don't know what he's thinking, but it never sounded like a good idea. So I don't have enough brain capacity to bandwidth to kind of digest that and give it a real answer. It's like 28 teams. Like, why are you talking about that?
Do you think in any way that's an attempt to be like, again, I found it odd that it was like the Big Ten talking amongst themselves are like, we should do this for a playoff, 24 to 28 teams. But meanwhile, the SEC and the Big Ten control the playoff and the future of the playoff, how many teams get in. And by the way, the Big Ten's not going to do any of this without the SEC's approval. So is this kind of a way of thumbing their nose at the SEC of like, well, you won't go to 9 conference games. We're playing 9 conference games. You're playing 8. So we'll just blow up the playoff. And I don't know where the hell this is coming from, because you've got Greg Sankey, who's very loud for the SEC, and then Tony Petitti, who you normally really don't hear much out of. And then this comes out.
I mean, everyone's scrambling in this new landscape to see how they can secure their media rights and make sure that they get their real estate and their products on the field. So I guess it's 28 is like an inclusive way of doing that or putting it out there, but it's ridiculous and just nothing to talk about in the summer. That's what I chalk it up to.
No. And if it were ever to come to pass or any expansion beyond what they have now, it's a money grab, period.
Right.
And you realistically cannot say that the teams that are in the 20s in the top 25 realistically can win the national championship. And I think there are people who have heard Eli Drinkowitz from Mizzou say it's like, oh, well, you're only allowing a very small percentage of college football to compete for the championship. That's because there's only a small percentage of teams that can actually hack it and beat each other to get to the national championship. Like, if you really think number 25 can topple number 1, you're on some great stuff, and I'd love to meet your guy. So there's that.
I mean, everyone's saying that there's more parity because of the transfer portal, and we don't know who guys are, and there's been more upsets in the past 5 years than previously. So maybe they're just trying to get their budgets up. I don't know.
They're just trying to give talking points for people like you. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are dying for Penn State's season to begin on August 30th. Until then, enjoy week 0. Enjoy the slate of games. Hop on FanDuel and make every moment more. We encourage that. Get in our comment section on YouTube. Tell us how you're feeling about all of the stuff going on within college football. How excited you are to have college football on virtually every Saturday now until January. I think it's a wonderful time to be alive. And tell us how you're feeling about Penn State football before they kick off against Nevada. He's Justin King. I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by FanDuel.